So with that, we thought we'd wrap up before we move into the Q&A. Please, again, do submit any questions that you have using the Q&A function or in the chat. We look forward to addressing some of your questions in the time we have remaining. But before doing that, we thought we'd just take a few minutes and maybe look in our crystal ball and give some thought to, what are some of the trends that we, expect or maybe hope to see shaping the function as we move through and out of the pandemic. So Beth's going to get us started here, and then I'll wrap us up.
Great. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, I'm going to take the first two. And, the first one isn't really probably a want, it's more of a need, right? How are we going to sustain the gains that have happened over the last year or so? HR has really been able to advance the agenda on things like DE&I, mental health, and working more flexibly than the function has, and these are things that the function has been pushing uphill for years. We've been talking about them, for a long time, and finally the time is here that that not only the pandemic caused us, but there's been more pull from both employees and leaders on those topics and others as well. But the biggest challenge comes now, right? Things are getting back to, normal, whatever the new normal is in your workplace. And you'll really need to figure out what's important to sustain those gains that you've already made and take them even further to support both the business and employees going forward. So some thoughts on doing just that. I've heard a lot on your companies talk about doing things like listening tours, specifically in the realm of DE&I. Last summer, I think, is when a lot of those started. But take that idea, repurpose that for different topics so that you can keep that pulse on what's going on and what's on employees' minds and what their experience is. A second way to think about that is, a lot of your companies talk about continuous improvement, especially in manufacturing and other areas. Well, really take that mindset, that continuous improvement mindset in HR, and continue to evolve support for things like mental health and flexible work. And the last thing I'd mention there is that, technology continues to advance. Make sure that your company is leveraging what's new out in the marketplace for you and for your own employees and for the HR function. The second theme that Brad and I identified is, obviously delivering HR virtually. Remote and hybrid work arrangements are here to stay. And that means that, not only are your employees and leaders working in that environment, but HR needs to operate in that environment. You will need to continue to, or HRBPs will need to continue to connect with remote employees. Technology and self-service will be more central, and COEs will need to adapt their practices and offerings to accommodate employees that are more widely distributed across different work arrangements. Remote and hybrid employees are, in many cases, no longer going to be the exception, but the norm. And this creates great opportunities, but it also creates challenges for your organizations. And so, a couple of challenges I would mention that you guys need to think about is that, companies really need to ensure that all segments of your workforce, so you've heard the home, hub, hybrid kind of differentiation, that all those segments are treated similarly when it comes to things like how they receive communication, who's talking to them, that they're included in different things, that they get job opportunities and career advancement, no matter which of those three arenas they may be in, that they're involved in task teams, that they're getting exposure and being pushed to continue to grow and learn no matter where they're working. And that can be challenging. So it's something for you to think about at your company and within your own culture. And HR really needs to ensure that there are systems in place to help leaders and employees maneuver in this new reality and make sure you have connection and a strong employee experience that will continue to support and drive your business and grow innovation. Brad, over to you.
Great, thanks, Beth. So just to pick up on the last three here, the first one around evolving HR capability, I won't dwell on because I just talked about that one a bit, but I thought it was worth reinforcing that we know that HR capabilities will continue to evolve and change, and it will be really critical to ensure that we continue to develop within the function. We tend to jokingly say we're the proverbial cobbler's children. We develop everyone else and don't focus much of that attention on ourselves. but it will be really critical as we move through and figure out, as these changes emerge, what capabilities we need to develop, that we do focus that attention internally as well as externally. I think what we heard across a lot of the different working groups was kind of implications around the employee experience, as we've talked about. We've heard that the pandemic has served to further make salient many of the silos that exist within the function. We've highlighted examples of that, the 5 different mental health programs being developed, or kind of conflict between COEs and HR business partners in roles and responsibilities. And obviously, all of this is not good news for the efforts that we've been engaging in recent years to really kind of drive and create positive employee experience. And so going forward, really thinking about, how do we drive this integration? And I think 2 things we need to think about. One is obviously structural, in the sense of, we've seen, as I talked about from the COE working group, organizations standing up program management COEs or HR councils, really as this kind of structural mechanism to drive coordination, communication, transparency across different parts of the function. And I think those efforts can go a long way towards really creating this kind of one HR approach that we're striving for. At the same time, we heard a number of examples that are more process driven. For example, one company talked about having a one HR team meeting that had representatives from every function coming together regularly to share their experience during the crisis and discuss roles and responsibilities going forward. So I think both of these structural as well as process pieces can come together to really help ensure that we're all working towards that common goal of a positive employee experience. And then lastly, I think at a global level, we can think about, how do we maintain the innovation mindset that's really come out of this pandemic? I think throughout, what we've seen in this webinar today and the insights that we've gained from the various working groups is that it's really served as an opportunity to accelerate and advance change within the function. And I think that's been great, but hopefully we can look ahead and think about how can we maintain that innovation mindset in the absence, hopefully, of major disruptors like a global pandemic. And I think a couple things we can think about there are, one, how do we continue to leverage data to figure out where those opportunities for innovation and change exist and where they might be most impactful? 2, continue to run experiments and pilots. I think, we were able to do that more during the pandemic because we had to, realizing, going 80% is fine. We don't need to be 100% every time before rolling something out. How can we continue that mindset going forward? 3rd, really think about how do we leverage cross-functional perspectives to really prompt creative solutions, bringing in those outside of the function, whether it's marketing, other areas, to really help provide insights. And then finally, really listening to our employees. A lot of the best innovations might come through those channels, understanding their experiences, where their pain points are. And we've certainly seen increased efforts in that realm, particularly in the DE&I space over the past year. And hopefully those listening efforts can help drive this innovation going forward.